Finnland, Ladies First, Aino Sutinen, dann zu meiner Linken Ville Tietäväinen und Roope Eronen. Und wir werden uns ein wenig über Comics in Finnland allgemein und auch über Comics in Finnland und ihre Präsentation in Deutschland in diesem Jahr unterhalten. Die Unterhaltung werden wir sofort auf Englisch führen. Ich hoffe, das ist kein großes Problem für die Anwesenden. So I'll start in English now. Thanks for coming, and just to give people an impression about how popular comics in Finland are. I went to the comics festival in Helsinki for a few times, and I was always surprised that there was so much going on. There was such a lively scene of comics makers and lots of people in attendance. They wanted to buy comics, and Finland is such a small country. There are only 5 million people. It was always very inspiring to go there. And then I heard that in Finland there also is a Donald Duck magazine, like the Mickey Mouse heft here in Germany. And the weekly circulation is about 300,000, which doesn't sound maybe like too much, but in Germany, I looked it up on good old Wikipedia. It's like if you transfer this number to Germany, it would amount to the same print run as Der Spiegel, Der Stern, Landlust, TV Movie und TV Spielfilm zusammen. That's just to give you an impression about how popular this one title, for example, is, and we will talk. Maybe we should start with a question: are comics popular in Finland? I always get the impressions they are very popular. Is there a certain style that is very dominant? Ville, maybe.
Well, I cannot compare to any other country, but I have been noticing that in the recent years, or say in these recent 10 years, the comics scene has been broadening a bit, very much actually. This people used to think comics in Finland as just newspaper strips and like you said, Donald Duck, but now more and more people are very well getting to know these longer formats and the idea that the comics is an art form that you can tell any story with. So these graphic novels and very original, uncompromising art comics, they have been a big increase.
Mm-hmm. And well, Ville, you have yourself created one graphic novel. You have made a few more, but one was just translated in Germany. It's called Unsichtbare Hände. I'm afraid I forgot the Finnish title.
Näkymättömät kädet.
And it was published in Germany by Avant Verlag, which is here in Hall 5, and maybe, well, it's about refugees. It's taking place in Spain. Maybe you can tell us a bit about how you came to this topic. What made you make this book?
Yeah, so well, I had the idea of this book about some undocumented immigrant, not exactly refugee, but an immigrant, as early as 2001, 15 years ago almost, and when I encountered the same kind of character that was so startling in to see this kind of people in Europe, that I felt like the character kept bothering me somehow. I didn't know anything about immigrants, let alone these undocumented immigrants, but this was a guy in Paris who had these sticky figures, these children's toys, and he was throwing them into big shop windows, and then they came tumbling down, and he looked so sad in his worn out suit, and he looked like somebody who had some completely different dreams when he came to Europe. And I started to thinking what were the motives and what were the dreams he had when he came, and is he in contact with his family, or was he too ashamed to be anymore, since obviously he hadn't had any money to send home, and that kind of thing. That was the starting point.
So you went to Spain, I understand, and you made research yourself.
Yeah, only after 5 years I encountered this anthropological thesis about the subject, about the very same questions that I had in mind, but I couldn't solve out. And the thesis was made by a man called Marko Juntunen, who was very helpful and agreed to come as a guide and interpreter with me in Morocco and Spain. And we did 2 journeys in the years of 2005 and 6, and in these journeys I met numerous amount of these undocumented immigrants before and after they have left Morocco, actually the shocking thing for me wasn't what I saw in Morocco, what were the motives and the ordeals they had when they had to leave, but the shocking thing was to see what's happening in Europe with them. As many it was estimated that over 40,000 undocumented immigrants were hiding and working in terrible conditions in Almeria, Spain, where there's this huge greenhouse area, and then I knew that this story would be important. That it really, I really felt that I had some kind of witness's obligation to tell the story.
The topic, of course, is a very international topic, and I was wondering how was the response to the book in Finland? Were you touching also on a subject that is important in Finland?
Well, at first I thought that this was a book of this magnitude and this subject that would not be first published in Finland, that nobody would take it, but to my surprise, my Finnish publisher VSOY approached me and not vice versa, because there was a long follow-up article about making this book in one of the biggest magazines in Finland, Suomen Kuvalehti, and so it had this exceptional pre-marketing sort of, but still both I and the publisher were really amazed how well the Finnish audience took it, and to my knowledge, several thousand Finnish people who had never earlier read anything like this, any serious long graphic novel. This was the first time they encountered this one, or probably they just got it as a present and never read it, but still it has been tremendously well approached.
Well, speaking about reception, it brings me to my next question, but first I want to lose a few words about the Finnish comics, the Comic Atlas Finland, which you can see over there on the table. It's the big black book. It's quite a massive volume with a selection of 12 artists and the same number of stories. The stories are quite long, about 20-25 pages each, so the book is a very big book and it gives you some insight, some overview over what's going on in Finnish comics today. Of course, the book cannot cover everything, so unfortunately some of the people on the panel now are not included, but Roope is in there, for example, and it's the style is very varied, and you can have a look into the book, well, right now on the screen, and of course over there at the stand of the Finland representation and at Reprodukt. It's been published in co-production by Reprodukt, the German comics publisher, and the Finnish Comics Society. And Aino, Sutinen, is not only a comics artist herself, we will talk about this too in a second, but I know you are also the press officer of the Finnish Comics Society. So I'm wondering how the reception... No, not working?
Is this on? Yeah.
So I was wondering, the book has been out for about 2 months now, and in Finland also people had the chance to read it, review it. How was the response in Finland?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been mixed also, because we make this anthology series of, for export, and obviously so is a selection, and so is a selection by a certain editor. The editor is chosen to pick their favorite comics, really, so it's not, you can't cover everything in Finnish comics. So always somebody's complaining that why was I left out, or why was this my favorite thing left out. Is this a representation of everything we do? But in general, it's been, I think it's been regarded as quite a bold project, because we make these massive books for exports.
It is the 4th volume.
This is the 4th volume. The first 2 ones were in Finnish, and the 3rd one in French.
Yeah, English. No.
3rd one was in French, and then now 4th one is in, in English.
Yes.
Did I say? First 2 in English, then 1 in French, and the French volume had only female artists, because we have a lot of female artists and France doesn't really. And this one is more selected by a German Sasha Homer, so in that respect it's a bit different from the other volumes, which were more produced by us.
So, as I mentioned, the book was co-edited and supported also by the Finnish Comics Society. What is the Finnish Comics Society? What do you do there?
We do a lot of things. We have the Comic Center in Helsinki. We do Helsinki Comics Festival, which is the biggest festival in Northern Europe for comics. We do we teach comics, and especially in the recent years we've had a lot of international events. Mm-hmm. So more and more we do international things. So we try to visit all kinds of events, like here.
Yes. Well, from my own perspective, it's really inspiring to see what the Comics Society does, what happens, and then how well supported comics are in Finland in general. We don't have it in Germany. Slowly people are waking up and see, oh, comics is something, it's an art form that is worth supporting. But in Finland you're like 10 steps ahead. And it's what I find really inspiring is that you not only support artists and do workshops in Finland yourself, but you travel abroad. Like this year, there will not only be a big representation of Finland comics, Finnish comics on this book fair, on Frankfurt Book Fair, but you are also setting up, for example, kind of a workshop on a comics festival in Switzerland.
Yeah, we do this pop-up comic center events in different places in Finland and also abroad.
So you're spreading the ideas that you're standing for.
Yeah. We also like to try a lot of new things and keep things exciting. So we have these events that we try different things, and we in Helsinki we have a cafe and bookshop and workshops. So we bring usually a cafe, a bookshop and workshops. It depends on where we go. We've done this in Russia and Estonia and in Kiel before, and a few different places. So in Fumetto we will be there for a week and a half, doing workshops and
there will be more things, I understand, this year, like there already was a very lovely exhibition in Germany, in the Finnland Institute in Berlin. Now you're here, then you will be in Switzerland, and there is the Comic Salon in Erlangen, where you will also be present and probably host an exhibition and do some more things.
Yeah, we usually do exhibitions everywhere, and we will have something in Vienna as well.
In Vienna? Wow.
Yeah.
But this is not the only thing that you, as a person, you do, but you're also a comics artist yourself.
Yeah.
And you have published one book, I understand, so far, which we can see here. It's called Taxi Kurdistani, and it's a travel diary in a way.
Yeah, this was published in 2009. It's called Taxi to Kurdistan. I was traveling in the Middle East, in Turkey, Syria, Iran, northern Iraq and Azerbaijan. I made a little travel comic book and I got a publisher, and this was my first book.
And you are working on in the same direction?
I'm working on another travel book, and I also do some reportage comics, and I do a lot of different stuff for comics, for magazines and commissions and short stories. And this is something that really interests me is travel comics, definitely, and reportage.
Yes. So do you have some inspiration where you draw? Do you draw some inspiration from other travel comics that you kind of process?
Yeah, definitely. It's still a small genre, but I keep finding new things. I was actually invited once to a festival of travel drawing in France, and before I had no idea that there could be a festival like this. It was only for people who travel and draw comics and illustrations, and it was really inspiring. So maybe this could happen only in France, that such a tiny scene could have a big festival where people buy tickets and come and see us.
So, Roope, we should also talk about your comics, which are going in a different direction than Aino's and Ville's, which are more reality-based. But, well, in a way, your books like Advanced Officers and Humans, which we can see here, and reality-based. And the story also you made for the comic atlas Finland, they also are very much reality-based. You may not see it on the first view because, for example, this story about the story in the comics atlas, it shows this lynx, this wild cat, and he's walking through a forest, and he's going to a supermarket, and all the time he's pondering how much he can buy with his money. He wants to buy beer, and he's weighing. If he buys so much beer, he can't buy cigarettes anymore. Can you tell us a bit about that story? Is it drawn from your life?
Yes, you already told what happens, but yes, I'm a bit like an addictive person. I think many of us are. So I wanted to have a view on that. Think about how addicted mind works. I think it's important subject because people's addictions are like brain manipulating people. I'm still working on it. I'm gonna make it as a 24-page magazine later.
Yes, because you're very often publishing not books, not graphic novels, but you publish a lot of zines and handmade books.
Yeah. Yes. Also, quite often this happens that I first make like one-page comic, and then I like the world so much I want to like develop the story in there. But these Offices and Humans books were first just like one page, and then I was like, whoa, I can make hundreds of pages.
Can you tell us a bit about the Offices and Humans, because the idea behind it, it's amazing, I think.
Well, it's very simple. It's just a reversed situation of role-playing games. Usually people are playing elves and dragons and warlords, stuff like that. But here dragons are playing office people in their offices. And instead of being excited about breathing fire, they are excited about photocopying or like a little piece of tape or whatever.
So they're rolling the dice and deciding how the story will go on with the office people.
Yeah, and it's a bit distanced often in the world. Like you find a tube that has a little ball in the end, and if you like move it on paper, it will make a line and stuff like that.
Again, I have to ask if it's drawn from real life. I know that you are part of the Kuti collective, which maybe you can tell us about too, but I was wondering if it's drawn from your experience of being in a studio with other comics artists.
Not from there, but I worked in an office for 1 year when I was a late teenager for civil service. And then after that, well, now when I started the books, I'm like all ears when I'm in like offices. If I like, pay a 5-minute visit to some office, I get like 100 pages of ideas. Or if I go to eat in some workplace, lunch, restaurant, I hear like great work jargon or etc. So I draw a lot of inspiration from real life.
Yeah, and your comics, or some of your comics, are exhibited right now at the Millionaires Club.
Yes, there's an exhibition of the Kuti Collective, which I'm involved in, and a bit more of works of me and Jano Latvanikkola, who was also present in this festival.
Yes, and this Millionaires Club, it's a lovely, I would say already institution. It's only the third time now that they...
I think it's second time, or is it third time?
I think the second time they made this bigger event now where you can go, well, unfortunately only today, but still I can only recommend going there. It's near the HTVK, and over there are many people. There are some exhibitions, like Roope said.
There's a street burger from Slovenia.
Exactly, and the Kuti Collective, and many people are selling their comic books, some comic publishers, but also small collectives, people from universities, illustration classes are selling handmade, screen-printed books, posters, and, well, if you have the time, I don't want to make you leave the book fair, which is also a nice event, but it's a very inspiring place right now. And now the name Kuti was mentioned a few times. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, it's a comic collective we started in 2005. First it was just a studio, but then we started to be more like an association. And grew from maybe 6 people to 15 quite quickly. And our goal was to just make alternative comics more easy to approach. We make a tabloid size free magazine 4 times a year, where there's lots of interesting new artists, mostly from Kuti, but we have issued something like 150 other artists as well. And now we have been changing our way of being an association. A bit more, we opened the association for like even more artists, and I think we are now like 30 people, and we are open to like have more. And we are going to start an agency to market these alternative comics outside of Finland. And we try to be like a professional association for like comics.
So it keeps evolving.
Sorry?
It keeps evolving.
Yes.
Stays in
10 years doing the same is kind of like a time when you have to refresh.
Yes. But will you keep doing the Kuti magazine?
Yes, we also changed the policy with that. First after doing like 30 democratic issues, where we always voted for comics that would be in, I think we got a bit bored because the people started to feel like it sometimes doesn't have like a point or something. So we started to have a circulating editor, chief editor, who can like choose everything what's in.
For those who don't know, Kuti, the Kuti Collective also publishes a free newspaper every 3 months.
That's what I mentioned.
Yes, it's Kuti, and it's a great magazine, I think, which is showcasing many artists from Finland, but not only from Finland. You're inviting artists from all over the world. I see. But you're not active only as a comics artist. You're also a musician.
Yes, experimental musician. Yes. I play solo music, more like electronic experiments, and then I improvise in a band that has been going on for more than 10 years too. So always fully improvised music.
So on this panel we have representatives of very different approaches and styles to comics, which I think are very well representing well, it's still a fraction only, but they give you an idea of how broad comics in Finland are. Aino is also publishing comics online. You're also web blogging.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that? Is it something that is popular in
yeah, it's really popular. A lot of people have comic blogs, and it's developed a whole kind of genre of comics, because you can see some people copying other people's styles, or not copying but getting inspired, and
that's what it is.
And it makes you draw in a different way, because you have to scroll from up to down. And a lot of them are autobiographical, but also other things, experimental comics or longer comics or strips, everything. I can show mine. In comic blogs you can easily publish things and get instant feedback. I think that's what's interesting, and it's a very easy way to publish. What I did also is these are some dreams that I had, and I just drew the dreams. Also I do some live drawing, like I got to see a presentation and I draw all the time about what the presentation is about and people who are speaking. And sometimes I've had paid work from my blog. I publish something in my blog and the magazine wants to publish it. So it's been very useful for my career as well. So I also use the blog as a CV, but also as a way to experiment with different styles. And I think a lot of people do the same thing. They experiment more in their blogs, and when they make longer things, they might spend more time. And sometimes you can even see that the blog things are more interesting when they're more spontaneous, something that you draw fast.
So, Ville, are you blogging?
No, actually, I have very little time, too little time to actually make comics and graphic novels just now. This whole year is going to go to my real profession, which is graphic design and illustration, which is, well, basically the same visual storytelling, but they are. I am not the author in those. those things. So, but I follow, for example, I followed Aino's blog and many of those blogs. It's really inspiring for other artists too. It's so straightforward that you never know when it's fulfilling some purpose.
So about the inspiration for your new book came from your daughter.
Oh yes, well yeah. The book after that was called Just Bad Dreams. It was actually I have it here. It was I had a problem with my daughter, or my daughter had a problem with nightmares when she was 3 to 6 years old, and since my wife has earplugs in the night, I was the one who always got up when Aino screamed, and I thought that I wanted to hear, of course, what is the matter, and I wanted to hear the dreams, and when Aino was 3 years old, she would tell, and she agreed to tell the dreams, and it is like this. I told her that telling about these dreams would help in and calm in many ways, and well, I tried to believe that the main reason for me was that I wanted to, since I woke up, I wanted to hear the stories, which were so weird. They were like so close to the possible common subconsciousness as one can get, because a 3-year-old cannot. Anybody hasn't tell her of what is horrendous, what you should be afraid of. So this was the first dream. They are in a chronological order. First dream that Aino tells me that she had a bad dream about bunnies, giant bunnies with high heels on, and at first I didn't have an idea that we are going to make a book together out of this, but when we had around 40 of these dreams noted, and Aino was already 6 years old, I suggested her that we could make a book out of this, and first we had to have the drawings by Aino, and as long as she remembers the dreams, and she drew all the dreams she remembered, and then I tried to sort of fill in the gaps and make the 1 or 2 spread dreams as understandable as dreams can get, and also it's at the same time this kind of making of book where these comic strips we are like awake, and we are discussing about these dreams, and so it was the most tedious 48 pages I have ever made. My daughter is such a demanding co-author. Nothing I did, nothing I drew wasn't good enough for her. She always said that what is not like in her dreams, and then we agreed that we would eventually make a version of the book which hasn't got my pictures in it, but I was luckily forgotten that promise. But yes, it was something completely different, and I really don't like to make any sequels, or I don't like to make the same book over and over. I wish I had every time some new ideas which would really interest and inspire me as an author. But probably I'm not going to do a book with Aino for a long time.
Well, as you can see, as you heard now, all people here on the panel are working in different fields. It's a very creative scene. It's very inspiring when I go to Finland and see what's going on there, the different styles and approaches to comics. And when I went, so you, now that I said scene, do you feel like part of the scene? Like in Germany, we talk of the comics scene. It's something different from the book space. And do you feel like part of the scene, Roope?
Yeah, I guess so, yes. So, I don't know what to say.
Is there a kind of solidarity between comics artists?
Yeah. I think the feeling is pretty like good. The people like to see each other and collaborate. I think like sarjakuvaseura is very important also to bring things together.
Comic Center.
Yeah, the comic center.
Sarjakuvakeskus in Finnish.
Yeah, one thing I noticed in Finland, and it's a bit different from Western countries, is that there is much less a dominating style or kind of comics. Like in America, you have the superheroes. In France, you have the funny albums, and in Germany, you have a bit of both. Well, there is some independent comics which are more a fringe thing. And what is a fringe only, which is a small pocket of the big comics universe in other countries, is comics in Finland in general. And I find this very remarkable that there doesn't seem to be a mainstream. But there is a mainstream in comic strips and newspapers. Maybe that's the closest you get to comic strips. Is it like this?
Yeah, I would say that luckily we in Finland we don't have this kind of comic industry where publishers think that it is namely that we have to, that somebody tells us to do the same thing over and over just to get to maximize the audience, but in Finland we have so many original and uncompromising artists, mainly because nobody thinks that this is there's a big money in it, so we just have to do it like without any big funding and production crew. And what actually about funding, Finland has had, compared to many countries, quite a good system with scholarships and grants. So unfortunately, I am now in the position that I am deciding about the grants, and I can get them for 2 years now. But many places I have visited, people have been surprised how well, for example, Finnish government and many private private funds, how well they are giving money to comics, making comics, and that sure helps with these own projects.
It's still a little bit marginal compared to some bigger art forms. So at the Comic Society we try to promote comics as an art form so that the grants would also get bigger, and we also try to make everyone apply for the grant for their projects.
But for the first time first time ever, Finland has a governmental budget for comics art form. It's not big, but it's a start.
We do this kind of lobbying in the Comic Society, so this is one big step for us to get this budget slot for comics in the government art scene. but there's still a lot more people applying than getting them. So, but the more there are artists, the more there will be.
Yeah, the more apply, the more we are able to ask.
I think there are more and more comics artists, so we're trying to get people to stay on that field and not just go do something else because they can't make a living in any way. And I think the quality is going up. It's like there's this common inspiration from seeing all this good work, so the overall quality of work is going up because of this. It's really exciting to see compared to 10 or 20 years ago. There's so much more and so much better.
And one new fund was also more or less established through the Finnish Comics Society, and it's kind of building a bridge to Germany and Leipzig especially. It's the Kuhn Comics program. I know maybe you can talk about this also.
Yeah, we have this thing called Kuhn. It's Comics Union of Northern Europe, so it's a scene between the 11 European countries where we get EU cultural funding for it. So basically what we do is a residence program, and you can apply for a residency in different countries in Europe. The locations vary every year a little bit, and you can also come to Helsinki for a residency. And basically there's time to work on your project and do an exhibition, maybe a book, like we did with Max Beitinger, who came from Leipzig to Helsinki. We published his book, Maiwald, in Finnish. So it depends what everyone wants to do.
And there also is a residency here in Leipzig.
Yeah, there's now a Finnish comic artist, Ella Eranto, here in Leipzig working on her project. So this is a new thing that not too many people know about yet, so we try to promote this as well. There's a website, fuelcomics.net.
And as you can hear, the closing fanfares are playing. Thanks for coming and thanks for talking about your projects and comics in Finland. Ville's book is available at the stand of Avant Verlag in Hall 5. Next to it is Reprodukt, where you can get the Comic Atlas Finland. You can get more comics like Roope's and Aino's over there at the stand of the Finnish representation. And well, read more comics, I can only say. Thanks for coming.